They laughed at me the first time I walked into that office. Not out loud, not the kind of laughter you can point at and call rude, but the kind that lives in glances, half smiles, the way conversations suddenly drop a notch when you enter the room. You know what I mean. I was 29, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, standing in a building where everyone else seemed born, knowing where to go, how to speak, how to belong. And in that moment, before anyone even said my name, they'd already decided who I was. Let me back up. My name is Ethan Cole. I grew up in a town people only talk about when something goes wrong. Closed factories, empty storefronts, schools with more metal detectors than textbooks. My dad left when I was 9. My mom worked 2 jobs and still came home apologizing for things that weren't her fault. I learned early how to stay quiet, how to not take up space, how to survive being underestimated. That skill sticks with you even when you don't want it to. So when I landed an entry-level job at a high-end consulting firm in a glass tower downtown, it felt unreal. I wasn't supposed to be there. That's what everyone else seemed to think too. The first day, my manager, Richard Hale, shook my hand and said, "So you're the scholarship hire," with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I laughed it off because that's what you do when you're trying to fit in. But inside, something tightened. Richard was polished, confident, the kind of guy who'd never been told no in his life. He spoke in meetings like he was performing, always louder, always certain. And from day one, he made it clear I was different. Not in a good way. He'd interrupt me mid-sentence. "We'll come back to that," he'd say, and never did. He'd assign me grunt work, then joke about how I was good with details, which somehow always meant I wasn't good with ideas. At first, I told myself it was normal. Pay your dues. Keep your head down. But weeks turned into months, and the pattern didn't change. Every time I brought something solid to the table, Richard found a way to dismiss it. "That's not how things work here," he'd say, or worse, he'd take the idea, rephrase it, and present it later as his own. And everyone would nod, because it was coming from him. The breaking point came during a client pitch. Huge account. The kind that could make or break careers. I'd spent nights running numbers, spotting a flaw in the client's expansion plan that no one else had caught. It was risky to point it out, but it mattered. When I brought it up in the prep meeting, Richard cut me off. "Let's not overcomplicate this," he said, smiling. "We'll stick to the safe approach." I remember sitting there, heat rising in my chest, thinking if this goes wrong, it's going to go really wrong. And it did. The client saw the flaw immediately. The room went quiet. Richard stumbled, tried to spin it, but the damage was done. We lost the account. Afterward, in the hallway, Richard pulled me aside. His voice was low, sharp. "Why didn't you push harder?" he snapped. I stared at him, stunned. "I tried," I said. He shook his head. "You need to learn when to speak up." Yeah, that happened. That night I went home and sat on my couch in the dark. No music, no TV, just me, and that familiar voice in my head saying, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you don't belong here." I thought about my mom, about every time she swallowed her pride to keep the lights on, and something shifted. I was tired of surviving quietly. So I started documenting everything. Every idea I brought forward. Every time Richard shut me down. Emails, meeting notes, dates. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let my story be rewritten again. A few weeks later, another opportunity came up. Internal competition. Teams pitching solutions to a complex problem. Winner gets fast-tracked for promotion. Richard announced it like a game he'd already won. "My team will handle this," he said, eyes flicking to me for half a second. Like I was already out. I waited until after the meeting, then walked into HR. My hands were shaking, but my voice didn't. I requested to lead a separate team. The HR rep raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I am." Word spread fast. People started treating me differently. Some with pity, some with amusement. Richard cornered me by the coffee machine. "You're making a mistake," he said, smiling like a warning. "This isn't your league." I looked at him and said, "We'll see." Those weeks were brutal. Long hours, skepticism from every direction. But my team showed up, people who'd also been overlooked. quiet analysts, designers no one listened to. We worked like hell. We challenged each other. We argued. We laughed at how absurd it all was. And, slowly, something solid took shape. Presentation day came. The room was packed. Executives lined the table. Richard went first. Slick slides, big promises, safe ideas. Applause followed polite but thin. Then it was my turn. I walked up there heart-pounding, palms sweaty, and for a second that old fear tried to grab me. But then I saw my team in the back nodding, and I started talking. Not performing, talking. About risks, about reality, about why the safe approach had failed before and would fail again. I showed the numbers, the scenarios, the uncomfortable truths. Halfway through, Richard interrupted. "That's speculative," he said. The room went still. I looked at him and replied, "So was your last pitch? This one's backed by data." A few people chuckled. He didn't. When it was over, there was silence. Then questions. Real ones. The kind that mean people are thinking. When the decision came down later that day, my team won. Richard didn't look at me as everyone filed out. He packed his things and left early. A week later, I was promoted. A month after that, HR called me in. There'd been a review. Patterns identified. Richard was being moved out of management. Here's the thing, though. That wasn't the victory that stuck with me. The real win was quieter. It was the moment I realized I didn't need their approval to belong. I'd spent years letting other people define my limits, my value. And the second I stopped doing that, everything changed. I still think about Richard sometimes, about how easy it is to confuse confidence with competence polish with truth. And I wonder how many people are sitting where I used to sit doubting themselves because someone else decided they were small. So let me ask you something. How many voices have you ignored because they didn't sound the way you expected? How many times have you been Richard? Or worse, how many times have you been me, staying quiet when you knew better? Drop a comment and tell me, where do you draw the line between playing the game and changing it, because, yeah, that line matters more than we like to admit.